You're listening to Psych to Parent, where we turn brain science into tiny wins at home. I'm Dr. Amy, your not-so-typical school psychologist, mom of two, and endurance athlete. I love a good data set and a diagnostic manual. But I also forget permission slips, overthink IEP emails, and occasionally replay the moment I snapped at my kids in the car. In other words, I'm in the messy middle with you, not above it. This show is for parents of big feeling, big thinking kids who are tired of vague advice and Pinterest perfect behavior charts. Each episode, I'll pull back the curtain on what I see in real evaluations, school meetings, my private practice, and my own kitchen, and translate the research into simple scripts, tiny routines, and nervous system friendly tweaks you can actually use. Think of it as a nervous system rehab meets mindset coaching meets a smart, slightly spicy, non-judgy friend in your earbuds. We'll take one real life challenge at a time and shrink it down into 1 or 2 tiny wins you can start this week. No perfection, no 47-step sticker systems, just small, repeatable shifts that add up over time. Quick legal-ish note in plain English. This podcast is for education and support. It's not therapy, it does not create a clinical relationship, and it's not a substitute for personalized medical or mental health advice. If you're worried about your child's safety or mental health, or your own, please reach out to a trusted professional. Okay, deep breath, drop your shoulders. You're not behind and you're not alone. Let's get psyched to parent. One pattern I notice every year is that the first few days of school can look surprisingly okay. And then the child falls apart. The parent will come into my office and say something like, I don't understand. They were so excited. The teacher says they're doing well. My kid liked the first day. Why are mornings feeling so impossible now? Why are we crying about homework? Why is my kid snapping at everyone? Why do they need me to help with things that my kid could do this summer? And underneath those questions is usually a fear that a parent does not say out loud. Is my child choosing this? Are we already losing control of the school year and it's only September or August? The answer is usually more complicated than motivation or attitude, because a child can like school and still struggle with what school requires. A child can be successful and still be spending more time than anyone can see. A child can hold it together in the classroom and have very little flexibility left when they get home. And sometimes the first week runs on novelty, new shoes, new supplies, a new teacher. The deeply thrilling discovery that the classroom has a pencil sharpener shaped like an animal. Then the full system comes online. Homework begins. Activities restart. The alarm clock has been rude for 5 consecutive mornings. The child realizes that this is not a special back-to-school event. This is now their life. And the effort starts showing up. I see this as a school psychologist, and I see it as a mom. I'm raising children who can manage a full school day, remember a complicated lacrosse play, and then come home personally offended that I asked them to put shoes in the location where shoes live. Now, that doesn't mean expectations disappear. It means I need to understand the load before I decide what the behavior means. Because the behavior you see after school may be the first visible receipt for effort your child spent all day. Welcome back to Psych to Parent. I'm Dr. Amy. I'm a school psychologist, a mom, and your school psych mom friend, helping you make sense of what happens at school so you can respond more effectively at home. This is the 4th episode in the Back to School August series about staying one step ahead of the school year. In the first episode, we built the back to school checklist that nobody gives parents. In the second episode, we reduce chaos with routines that can carry some of the remembering for the whole family. In the third episode, we talked about what can be normal during the first weeks of school and how to watch the trajectory instead of predicting the year from one hard Tuesday. In this episode, we're going underneath the behavior. We're talking about why a child who is capable, bright, social, excited, or fine at school may still struggle when school starts. By the end of this episode, you will be able to identify the hidden demands that may be draining your child, understand why stress and fatigue change the skills they can access, and find the bottleneck before you try to fix the behavior. We're going to talk about executive functioning, self-regulation, sleep, social and sensory load, and what it actually means when a child saves the messiest part of the day for home. Here's the big idea I want to leave you with. A child can meet the demand and still pay a high cost for meeting it. One of the most confusing parts of parenting a school age kid is watching their skills appear and disappear depending on the moment. They can get dressed independently on a Saturday, but come Monday morning, putting on socks has become a constitutional crisis. They can complete a difficult math assignment at school, and at home, one direction to unpack the backpack produces tears. Adults look at that inconsistency and often assume the child is manipulating the situation. They think things like they can do it when they want to. Sometimes children will avoid tasks, test limits, or make choices we need to address. But ability is not the only variable. Access matters too. A skill can exist and still be harder to access when the brain is tired, stressed, hungry, overstimulated, rushed, uncertain, or carrying too many pieces at once. Now think about your own functioning. You know how to answer an email, but at the end of a very long day, a message that says, "Quick question," can make you want to move to a town without Wi-Fi. You might know how to make dinner, but when everyone is hungry, there is no clean pans, and someone is asking what is for dinner while looking directly at the dinner you're actually making in front of you, your flexibility may be lower than it was at 10 a.m. in the morning. The skill didn't vanish. Your available capacity changed. Children have that same variable with less mature systems for noticing it, explaining it, and adjusting the plan. So the thought, "but they can do it," it's not the end of the conversation. It is the beginning of a better question. What can make this skill easier or harder to access right now? Let's build a simple model. Every school day contains demands, and every child arrives with a certain amount of available capacity. The demands include the obvious things, like reading, writing, math, listening, completing work. But school also requires a long list of invisible skills: holding instructions in mind, stopping one activity and shifting to another, ignoring noise, waiting, monitoring the teacher's face and tone, reading peer cues, finding materials, remembering what comes next, recovering after a mistake, managing disappointment without leaving the room or throwing a pencil into another zip code. Now, many of those tasks rely on executive functions: working memory, inhibitory control, and cognitive flexibility. A major review by developmental cognitive neuroscientist Adele Diamond describes executive functions as the skills that help us hold information in mind, resist an automatic response, stay focused, and adjust when the circumstances change. This review also emphasized that executive functioning is sensitive to stress, sleep, physical health, and emotional well-being. So, when a kid enters a new school year, the same brain system is being asked to do more work in a less familiar environment. That is the demand side. Capacity isn't fixed either. It changes with things like sleep, food, being sick, anxiety, sensory overload, social uncertainty, how much effort the child has already spent trying to do everything correctly. Stress matters because the prefrontal cortex, the brain region heavily involved in working memory, planning, inhibition, flexible problem solving, is especially sensitive to stress chemistry. This is why telling a highly stressed kid to, quote, use your coping skills can sometimes sound like telling someone to locate the fire extinguisher while the smoke alarm is screaming. The skill may be there. Access is harder. Self-regulation is also part of readiness for learning. And here's what we know from the research. Learning depends not only on what a child knows, but also on their ability to direct attention, manage emotion, and respond flexibly in context. And you know what another fun factor is? Sleep. In another study on sleep, it was interesting because they found that school performance was moderately related to daytime sleepiness. Now, the findings don't mean like one late bedtime causes academic failure. They do mean fatigue is not a minor side issue when we are trying to understand a kid's attention, learning, mood, and recovery. So when a child struggles after school, I want you to picture a gap. On one side, everything the day is asking from them, and then on the other side, the capacity they can access in that moment. Behavior often shows up in the gap. Now, the goal is not to eliminate every demand. The goal is to understand where the gap is largest and decide whether to reduce demand, add support, build a skill, or create recovery. The first teaching point I have in this episode is that children are not only doing schoolwork at school, they're doing a lot of other things too. There is people work, body work, organization, performance, and transition work. And that matters because a parent may look at the assignment that your kid brings home from school and think, this work is not too hard for my kid. That may be true. The reading passage may be easy. The hard part may be finding the passage, remembering the 3 directions, starting before the teacher moves on, ignoring the person who's tapping the pencil behind them because it's so annoying and frustrating, and writing an answer while worrying that everyone else is faster. A child can understand the math and struggle with pace. A child can love reading and struggle with being called on unexpectedly. A child can behave beautifully and use tremendous energy inhibiting movement, speech, worry, or frustration. And a child can earn good grades and still need support. Performance tells us what the child produced. It doesn't automatically tell us what producing cost them. This is one of the most important things I want parents to understand about the homeschool mismatch. Schools may be seeing the product, home may be seeing the recovery. Neither side is necessarily wrong. They may be seeing different points in the same cycle. Let's take a child who is quiet and compliant at school. The teacher sees a student who follows directions and they complete assignments. The parent sees a child who comes home irritable, refuses simple tasks, and says school's terrible. We don't choose between school is missing it and the child is manipulating the parent. We ask better questions. How many prompts did the kid need? How independently are they completing the work? What parts of the day require the most effort? How long does it take them to return to baseline at home? Is the cost decreasing as the routine becomes familiar? Those type of questions give us a fuller picture than fine versus not fine. They also stop us from treating behavior as a moral verdict. A child is not weak because school costs them energy. And the parent is not failing because the child has less left at 4 o'clock. The day asks for something, and we are trying to identify what. So here's something important. Performance tells you what your child produced. It doesn't tell you what producing it cost. Now, the second teaching point is a metaphor I use with families all the time. Think of regulation like a budget, not a literal neurological like bank account, a practical metaphor. Every time your child has to wait, shift, inhibit, cope, problem solve, filter noise, tolerate uncertainty, or recover from a mistake, some energy is spent. Some children have more available in certain settings. Some tasks are cheaper because they are familiar. Some environments make the same task much more expensive. And when the budget is low, children tend to use the quickest response, not necessarily the wisest response. This is where we see kids snap, refuse, cry, go silent. Now, this doesn't mean there are no boundaries. A low budget explains behavior. It doesn't make hurtful behavior okay. You can hold both truths. You are out of gas, and you may not take that out on me. This is also where I want to clean up a popular parenting phrase you may have heard. I've heard this in practice. Your child melts down at home because you are their safe person. Sometimes safety may be part of why a child releases control at home. But that sentence is not a diagnosis, and it should not become a reason to stop asking questions. A child melting down at home does not automatically prove that everything at school is fine. It does not automatically prove home is the only safe place. It doesn't mean the parent should quietly absorb hours of aggression because it is supposedly a compliment. It may mean the kid used a significant effort during the day and has less inhibition or flexibility when they get home. Usually, we need more than one sentence from Instagram to understand it. The American Psychological Association's Back to School guidance notes that anxiety may show up through behavior and physical complaints, not only through a child saying something like, I'm anxious or nervous or my tummy hurts. The APA recommends calm support, preparation, and professional help when anxiety persists or interferes with functioning. Now, the American Academy of Pediatrics also emphasizes the importance of sleep routines, preparation, problem solving around worries, and collaboration with school when a kid is struggling. Those are not magical fixes. However, they are ways to protect capacity and make demands more predictable. So when your child walks through the door, don't ask only, what behavior do I need to stop? You might also ask, what did today cost? And what helps this child recover enough to use their skills again. Being a safe person does not mean becoming the emotional punching bag. Understand the load, protect recovery, and keep the boundary. The third teaching point is where this becomes practical. When behavior changes after school starts, don't begin with a massive behavior plan. Find the bottleneck. A bottleneck is the place where the demand begins to exceed the child's skills or capacity. It's not always the moment of the meltdown. The meltdown may be the last domino. For example, the child screams when homework starts. The bottleneck may be homework difficulty, or it may be that homework begins 5 minutes after a loud bus ride, before the child has had a snack, and while the parent is asking 6 questions about the day. The child refuses to get dressed in the morning. The bottleneck may be clothing, sensory discomfort, or uncertainty about the school day, or a bedtime that leaves them exhausted, or too many verbal directions delivered while everyone is rushing. The middle schooler who says they don't care about missing work, the bottleneck may be motivation, or they may not know where assignments live, how to prioritize them, or how to recover from already feeling behind. When we target the wrong bottleneck, we add effort without improving the system. We create a sticker chart for unpacking the backpack when the actual problem is that the child can't remember the 6-step routine. We lecture about attitude when the child's confused. And this is why I don't want you to only ask, how do I make this stop? I want you to ask better questions. Like, what happens right before this? What skill is being asked for? What makes the task expensive? Then run a small experiment. Move the snack before the conversation, put the checklist where the routine happens, reduce the number of words, preview the transition. Ask the teacher whether a child needs repeated prompts or appears worried during a specific part of the day. If nothing changes, that's data too. You're not excusing the behavior, you are solving the right problem. Meltdown is often the last domino. Find the bottleneck, not just the loud moment. Here's the framework I want you to use when your child starts struggling after school begins. I call it the school day load map. Look at 4 areas. First is thinking load. What is the child having to remember, organize, start, stop, or switch? How many steps are hidden inside the task? Do they understand the work but struggle to begin? Are they holding directions in mind while also writing, listening, or moving materials? Thinking load often hides inside words like lazy, careless, unmotivated, not paying attention. Number 2 is the people load. What social or emotional monitoring is happening? Are they learning a new teacher's expectations, trying to figure out where they belong, worrying about being called on? Managing conflict, comparison, teasing, or friendship uncertainty? A child can be socially successful and still spend a lot of energy maintaining that success. Third is body load. What's happening with sleep, hunger, movement, noise, light, clothing, temperature, illness, or sensory input? Is the cafeteria overwhelming? Is the bus loud? Are they returning to early mornings after a summer schedule? Body load is not separate from behavior. It changes the capacity available for everything else. Number 4 is recovery. What helps the child return to themselves? Is it food, some quiet time, maybe some physical movement, connection without questions, a clear first step, time alone, a predictable routine? And how long does recovery take? Recovery isn't indulgence. It is information about what the nervous system needs before the next demand. So your load map is thinking, people, body, recovery. You don't need to solve all 4. Find the area carrying the most weight and begin there. Let me translate one of the most emotionally loaded phrases in the homeschool relationship. They're doing fine. A teacher may mean your child is completing the expected work, they're following classroom rules, they're not showing any obvious distress, they're not requiring some unusual intervention. Now, this is useful information, but fine usually describes what is observable in that setting. It may not describe effort, internal worry, the number of prompts needed, the energy spent staying quiet, or what happens when the child gets home. And the teacher may truly not know the cost yet. They are observing an entire classroom and learning what each student looks like under different demands. So don't respond to fine by arguing that your child is secretly not fine. Add information. You might say something like, I'm really glad they are participating. At home, we are seeing a long recovery period and a lot of distress around the next day. Could you help me understand how independently they are managing, whether they need frequent prompts, and whether any particular part of the day seems more effortful? Or when you say fine, do you mean they seem comfortable or that they are completing the work and following expectations? This isn't a gotcha kind of question, it's a clarification question. The teacher has expertise in the classroom. You, as a parent and caregiver, have expertise in your child across time and settings. The goal is not to prove that one side has the real version. The goal is to understand both performance and cost. Let's walk through a few versions of the demand capacity gap. Let's think about the younger kid who becomes clingy again. Now, your child has been independent all summer. Now they want you beside them while they get dressed, follow you around the house, and ask repeated questions about drop off. It is tempting to say, "You're too old for this. You know how to get dressed." The dressing skill may not be the issue. They may be barring connection while their brain manages a bigger transition. You can hold the routine without shaming the need. You get dressed, and I will sit right here while you start. Support the first step, then fade the help as they become more familiar with it. Another example is the strong student who cries over one mistake. The teacher reports excellent work. At home, your child erases the homework answer until the paper tears. The academic task may be within their ability. The load may be performance pressure, uncertainty about the teacher's standards, or the effort of doing everything correctly all day long. Don't only say, "It does not have to be perfect." Ask what the mistakes mean to them. Then help define a stopping rule. One careful check, then we turn it in. The skill is not just math, it's tolerating good enough. Now here's another example, the child with the exploding backpack. Your child is bright, understands the work. The backpack contains 3 loose papers, a permission slip from another era, 2 pencils without erasers, unidentifiable snack that has achieved consciousness. Don't assume they don't care. Look at thinking load. Where are the papers supposed to go? When is the child expected to follow them? How many categories are they managing? Is there a routine for checking? Build one visible system before adding another lecture. Now, for the child who melts down after the bus, the child walks in loud, rude, or tearful. Before asking for the school report, look at body load. The bus may have been noisy. Lunch may have been early. They may have been sitting and inhibiting movement for much of the day. Start with a boundary and a landing. You may not yell at me, backpack down, water and snack, 10 quiet minutes, then we will try again. You are not rewarding the yelling. You are restoring enough capacity for the child to meet the boundary. That keeps responsibility without turning shame into the intervention. When kids struggle after school starts, adults often interpret the behavior as a message about us. They don't respect me. They saved the worst for me. They are being ungrateful. They were fine until I asked one simple thing. Sometimes behavior does communicate a relationship problem or a limit that needs repair. But often, the child is not delivering a carefully composed message. They are showing you the point where the system stopped holding. Underneath, the behavior may be, "I spent all day remembering what everyone expected. I was scared to ask for help. I'm tired of people looking at me. I didn't know where to put the paper and now I feel stupid. I worked so hard not to cry." The reframe is not, "My child cannot help anything they do." The reframe is, "This behavior tells me where skills and capacity ran out. I can hold the boundary and investigate the load." That's firm, kind, and it's much more useful than deciding your child has become a different person because school started. Here are some parenting scripts you can borrow from me. Script number 1. When your child falls apart over a small request, you can say something like this: "This looks bigger than the backpack. You still need to put it down. First, let's get your body out of emergency mode, and then we will do the 1 step." Script number 2. When you need a boundary during an after-school meltdown, "I believe that you are out of gas. You may be upset. You may not scream at me or hurt anyone. We are taking 10 minutes apart, and then I will help you restart." Script number 3. When your child says school is too much, "I believe you. Let's figure out which kind of too much. Too much thinking, too many people, too much noise, or not enough recovery. Script number 4, when your kid says, I don't care. You don't have to feel motivated before we look at the problem. Show me where the task lives and which step stopped working. Script number 5, when your child is anxious about the next day, your brain is trying to prepare for every possible problem. We only need a plan for the first 2 steps: getting in the building and finding your first safe person. Tiny wins for this episode. Remember, pick one is enough. You are not conducting a full neuropsychological evaluation at your kitchen island. Friends, that's my job. All right, tiny win number 1. Name the costliest part of the day. Ask your child, which part takes the most energy? Getting started, keeping track, dealing with people, or holding it together? You are looking for a starting point, not a perfect answer. Tiny win number 2, protect one recovery window. Create 10 to 20 minutes after school with fewer words and fewer demands. Snack, hydration, quiet movement, or connection based on the kid. Then observe whether access to skills improves. Tiny win number 3, move one demand. Does the child need to unpack immediately? Can the school report wait until dinner? Can one activity pause during the first weeks? Moving a demand is not avoiding it. It is placing it where the child has a better chance of succeeding. Tiny win number 4, anchor sleep by wake time. Choose the wake time your school schedule requires and work backward towards a consistent bedtime routine. Don't expect one heroic early bedtime to erase a summer schedule. Consistency is the tiny win. Tiny win number 5, ask one cost question. Instead of only asking, did you finish? Ask, what part took the most effort? That question helps you see the difference between performance and cost. Before you go, a few tiny wins for the podcast. First, share this episode with a parent whose child is technically doing fine and then dissolving into a puddle beside the backpack every afternoon. Second, make sure you're following the podcast wherever you like to listen. You don't want to miss the final chapter in this series where we talk all about school concerns, when parents should wait, and when they should act immediately. Third, grab the free after-school reset guide. It's linked in the show notes. This episode explains why the after-school crash can happen, and the guide gives you a practical order for what to do next. Drop the load, fuel and hydrate, create a quiet landing, connect briefly, then transition to the next demand. It also gives you scripts and a build your own reset plan so you are not trying to reason with a depleted brain while holding a lunchbox that has somehow leaked yogurt into another dimension. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram. We're building a community of fellow parents and caregivers where we share tiny wins, scripts, and strategies. Parenting takes a village and a team, friends, and I'm cheering you on. When kids struggle after school starts, it's easy to make the behavior mean too much. They're lazy, disrespectful, or are not ready. School's failing them. We're already behind. Sometimes there is a real concern that needs attention and action. But before you write the entire story, look at the load. What is the thinking load? What is the people load? What is the body load? What helps recovery? Remember, a child can meet the demand and still pay a high cost for meeting it. A child who completes the work may still be confused. A child who follows the rules may still be anxious. The child who behaves at school may still need support at home. The child who melts down at home still needs boundaries. Understanding is not excusing. Support is not removing every expectation. We are trying to make the demand visible so we can respond to the actual problem. In the next episode, we are closing the August Back to School series with the decision parents find the hardest. When do I wait? When do I contact the teacher? When do I push for more support? And when does my gut know something before I have enough words to explain it? We're going to build a clear framework for school concerns, when parents should wait or act. But for this week, do not look only at what your child did. Look at what the day asked from them. Then choose one place to lighten the load, strengthen support, and protect recovery. That is enough. And the next time you sit at that tiny round table in that tiny chair, remember, Schools have expertise, and you are the expert on your child. Your insight is not extra, it's essential. You're not behind. You're building a partnership, and you're building skills, yours and theirs, one small, doable step at a time. Until next time, my friends. Thank you for hanging out with me on Psych to Parent. I'm Dr. Amy, your not so typical school psychologist, and I'm genuinely glad you're here doing this work instead of quietly white knuckling it and blaming yourself. Your tiny win from today's episode is simple. Do not overhaul your entire parenting style. Pick one idea, one sentence, or one tiny shift and try it in a low stakes moment this week. Then notice what changes, even if it is just by 1%. If you want more support, head over to psychtoparent.com. You'll find show notes, simple scripts, and parent-friendly guides that go with these episodes. While you're there, make sure you join the Tiny Wins mailing list so you get weekly brain-based tips, real-life examples from my work with families, and first dibs on new workshops and resources. It's the easiest way for us to stay connected beyond the podcast. If this podcast was helpful, it really does matter when you tap follow or subscribe. Leave a quick review or text it to a friend who is parenting a big-feeling, big-hearted kid too. This podcast is for education and encouragement. It is not therapy, and it's not a substitute for individualized care. If you're worried about your child or yourself, please reach out to a trusted professional in your area. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are building something new, one tiny win at a time. I'll see you in the next episode, probably with a cold coffee in hand, cheering you on.